Chalk war in the classroom, storyline, 1, opening, morning at school. In a school, a class that is known for being noisy is having a math lesson. Mr. Anton, a fierce but funny teacher, is explaining the material seriously. The children in the class, especially Andi and Budi, are bored and start to disturb each other by throwing small pieces of chalk. 2. The beginning of the funny incident, chalk throwing action. Andi throws a small piece of chalk at Budi, but misses and instead hits Rani's head, a quiet student at the front of the class. Suddenly, Rani is shocked and accidentally throws the return chalk in the direction where the first piece of chalk came from. However, it is Lala, the sleepyhead in the corner of the class, who gets hit. 3. The chalk war begins. When Lala wakes up and is confused, she immediately retaliates without knowing who threw it first. In a short time, all the children in the class are involved in an impromptu chalk war. Everyone is busy throwing chalk without paying attention to Mr. Anton's lesson. 4. Mr. Anton gets hit too, unbeknownst to her. One piece of chalk that Budi threw actually hits Mr. Anton's back. All the children were silent and shocked. They were waiting for Mr. Anton's reaction, who suddenly stopped writing on the board. Mr. Anton turned around, pretended to be serious, and asked in a low voice, "Who started this war?" 5. Hilarious plot twist. Mr. Anton gets revenge. When all the students were scared, Mr. Anton instead took some chalk from his desk and started throwing chalk at Andi and Budi. Mr. Anton then said, "If it's a war, let's have a real war." The class erupted in laughter because it turned out that Mr. Anton was also enjoying this chalk war moment. 6. Unexpected ending. The principal arrives. When everyone was busy throwing chalk, suddenly the principal, Mrs. Linda, entered the classroom with a serious face. Everyone immediately became silent and pretended to go back to studying. Mr. Anton, who was caught red-handed. Mr. Anton gets caught and takes revenge. After the atmosphere in the class became increasingly chaotic with the increasingly lively chalk war, Mr. Anton still tried to remain serious. However, fate had other plans. In the midst of the hustle and bustle of throwing chalk, Budi, who had been busy returning the chalk from Lala and Siska, accidentally aimed his chalk too far forward, and, zap! The chalk flew right into Mr. Anton's back. The entire class immediately fell silent. The laughter and noise suddenly disappeared, replaced by an almost tense silence. All eyes were on Mr. Anton, who slowly stopped writing and took a deep breath. Mr. Anton turned around with a straight face, then looked at each child in the class one by one while saying in a low but clear tone, "Who wants to confess?" The students all looked at each other, but no one dared to speak. Andi and Budi tried to hold back their laughter, but the fear that arose made them only elbow each other while pretending to be serious. However, instead of scolding his students, Mr. Anton suddenly walked to his desk with slow steps. Then, he took 3 intact pieces of chalk, raised them while saying in a rather intimidating voice, "If you think you're the only ones who can throw chalk, you're very wrong." In an instant, Mr. Anton threw the chalk with incredible accuracy. The first chalk shot fast, hitting Andi on the shoulder, making him surprised and cover his mouth to hold back his laughter. The second chalk flew and hit Budi, who was preparing to throw another piece of chalk. And the third chalk hit Rani, who could only smile embarrassedly because it turned out she had also been caught throwing chalk. Instantly the class became noisy again and the students burst out laughing seeing Mr. Anton, who had joined in the chalk war. Mr. Anton laughed out loud with them, and said, "This is exciting mathematics, right?" Unexpected ending. The principal's arrival. In the midst of the excitement, unexpectedly, the classroom door suddenly opened. The principal, Mrs. Linda, stood in the doorway with a serious expression as she looked at them. Suddenly the classroom became silent again, and Mr. Anton, who was also shocked, dropped the chalk from his hand. "What are you doing, Mr. Anton?" asked Mrs. Linda in a flat but questioning tone. Mr. Anton only smiled awkwardly, trying to hold back his laughter as he answered, This. We are doing a math practicum, ma'am. The children are learning to calculate the angle of the chalk throw." The class erupted in laughter, while Mrs. Linda only shook her head with a smile. She said, "Okay, the important thing is that the grades are good, Mr. Anton." As she left the classroom, closing, the chalkboard becomes an everlasting memory. After that incident, the classroom returned to order, although the students' faces were still full of laughter. Mr. Anton closed the lesson by saying, "Remember, math is serious. But sometimes it also needs a little chalk." The students could only laugh again, and from that day on, the chalkboard became an unforgettable memory in their class. This story can make us imagine the funny atmosphere at school, right? Mr. Anton and his students really made the moment unforgettable.